Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining this live event. Today we continue our discussion on pre-authorized and post-authorized and in general method level authorization. Thank you very much for being here with me. If you are watching the event live, don't forget that you have a live chat there so you can ask the questions in the live chat. If you watch the event recorded, you can still ask questions in the comment section, and as usually I advise you follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Now we will continue the discussion we started last time in lesson 7 that was so rudely interrupted by YouTube. So I had to quit the lesson, and that's why if you will watch that one you will see it ends up abruptly. It's not because we did like that, it's because we were actually stopped. So I will continue today our discussion, and I just want to remind you first where we are, and then we step back in the code. I will use the same example. I will continue on the same application we started on last time. So I will very quickly present the configurations and the endpoints, and then we will start over because we didn't manage to enter into too many details last time. So it doesn't make sense to spend the time now with recreating the application. So first of all, let's make sure that we know where we are. So you know that in a web application you have the authorization that's done at the filter level, and now we discuss the authorization done at the method level. And the difference is that it at the method level is actually implemented in an aspect. And again, for those of you who don't remember what aspects are, you can anytime review the lessons related to aspects from my Spring Fundamentals series, or read chapter 6 from Spring Start here. You will find out what aspects are. And yeah, we have the filters, and you know that the filters delegate to the controller. So this is filter. You can say it's the authorization filter. Of course, you know there are multiple filters already. So we have the authorization filter, and in case the rules that the authorization filter implement they are fulfilled, then the request, the HTTP request, is delivered to the controller. Okay, and then it's further, of course, depending on the dependencies you have. Usually you have a service, and then you have a repositories, proxies, managers, different kind of components. When we discuss method level authorization, you remember what I told you last time. You can apply method level authorization on any Spring Bean. So as long as the object is a Spring Bean, whether it's implemented as a component or using the bean annotation, it will be aspected properly, and then you can apply the rules the way we will discuss now. And again, a little bit of a difference that you understood starting last time is that, of course, in case of a method, in case of the method authorization, you can apply this whether you have a web app or a non-web app. So you can apply it to any kind of an application. The filter level authorization is something that is applicable. We can discuss it only for web applications, because otherwise you don't have HTTP filters. So one of the things that we know is that we can use method level authorization anywhere in any kind of Spring application, while the filter based is something that we can discuss about only for web apps. But at the same time, we know that being designed as an aspect, it intercepts the methods, and then theoretically it's less performant. Practically, I don't think you will ever observe that. But as you will see in our examples that we'll create today and in the next lessons, it's a lot more clean to use than what we used in the previous lessons. So that's why a lot of developers like to use method level authorization instead of filter level authorization, because it's easier to read. Okay, that being said, and hopefully we are in line on where we were, let me go back to my IntelliJ and explain you a bit what we have here. So you remember that we have a simple controller class. You can see the REST controller annotation, and we have a few endpoints that are related to what we discussed. So last time you have seen, I think up to the point where the lesson was interrupted, you have seen the explanation on the demo 1 and demo 2 endpoints. But I think for demo 3 we will have to go back, and I will explain it, because I don't think it actually got recorded or streamed. So I will actually start by going back to this endpoint and explaining what the heck is this. To enable the method level security, remember that you need to use the enable global method security annotation, and then we discussed that we have a few annotations and we will take them one by one. The most important, the ones that I consider to be essential, are the pre-post annotations. These pre-post annotations are 4 of them, so it's pre-authorized, post-authorized, pre-filter and post-filter, and to enable them you have to use the flag pre-post enable true. Besides this, our configuration is very simple. You can see here we just request authentication. We have a couple of users, John and Bill, and we use them to demonstrate what we want to prove here, so the way the pre-post annotations work, and a password encoder, because that's needed, so you need to do that. So that's basically a very simple configuration, giving us a couple of users. The difference is only in the authorities they have, and we will use these authorities to prove how the pre-authorized and post-authorized work. So you can see for the couple of endpoints we created, they are very simple. We only applied the has authority. We remember that we have the has authority, has any authority, has role, and has any role methods. So you can still use them. They have the same name as the methods you used when you designed filter level authorization. So you can use any of these here. And the first couple of endpoints actually show you the example with has authority and has any authority, but you can similarly use the has role, has any role, in case you have designed your rules based on badges, on roles, instead of actions, which is what we call authorities. Okay, but we stopped on discussing the fact that with pre-authorize you actually have access to the parameters of the method. So this is a very important thing, because it's something that you can't do with filter level authorization. So if you were to design your filter level authorization, meaning here after authorized requests you use matchers methods like we did in the previous lessons. By the way, guys, if you are new to this lesson, this is lesson 8 already, so we already discussed the stuff that you don't understand. If you don't understand it, might be because we have already discussed it, and I won't go back to it. The MVC matcher, so you can just use MVC matchers and then apply, say, has authority, has any authority, has role, and so on. So similarly to the way we use them in these first couple of endpoints. But what you can't do here is access the values that are sent through the HTTP request, like path variables, request parameters, the body of the request. So you can't access them here. So at this point, at the filter level authorization, you can apply according to the authentication object in the security context any rule you want, but only related to the, you only have access to the information in the security context. You don't have access to the information that's on the request. So one thing that is different is that it's very easy using pre-authorized to apply different rules that not only refer to the authentication, but they also refer to the parameters. And here it is an example. You see, when you want to refer to one of the parameters of the method, so this is the something here, you use this sharp symbol in front, and then the name of the parameter you want to use. So then when you do something like this in Spring expression language, then this expression refers to the exact value that has been provided as a parameter of the method demo3. So then I can say something like, if what came here as a path variable is equal with the name on the authentication, and then you need to know that this authentication is actually the authentication object from the security context itself. So this is exactly that object holding all the information that has been stored in the security context after the authentication process. Remember that authentication at the end, when it's successful, all the information is stored in the security context. So then you have it available for the authorization. So that's this object. You simply write authentication, pre-authorized knows what that is. So in this case, authentication is exactly that object from the security context. And then I can say something like authentication name. And I do that because I know that the name is inside, but what we can do is see exactly what's in our authentication if we want. So we can say something like var a security context, just to show you as an idea what else you can do is this authentication. So if you know how this looks like, then you can refer here to any of its values. Having access to the parameters, isn't it less secure? I don't see any reason why this will be less secure. Sometimes you have to manipulate the values. There are some values that you get here. Again, I don't see how could this be less secure. How could someone access something somehow, considering it's only some parameters? So I guess it will not be like you have passwords here or something like that, or secrets that are sensitive information, or at least if you have something like that, it will not be unencrypted. So no, there is no problem with having access to the parameters. So on the contrary, it's very useful. So in real world applications, there are many cases where you apply different rules based on what comes on the request. So not only on the path or the HTTP method, this is what you learn to do with matchers, but on the data on the request. You want to say if specific parameters have been sent, then it's only accessible to specific users. So that's very useful to have something like this, and using pre-authorized is the only way in which you can do that. So see, I have started the application, and then I can simply call my demo3 endpoint, saying something like HTTP localhost 8080 demo, and then whatever you want here. So if we go back, the rule was if the name on the authentication is equal to the value on the path variable, then it works. That means the call will be allowed, the call of the method will be allowed, otherwise it won't be allowed. So if I write here something like XYZ, and then most likely I need to authenticate. So I think it was something like John 1 2 3 4 5. The expectation is this will with this we will have a 403 forbidden, because the value here is not equal to this one, and that's the rule that we implied. So we said the value here, okay, the value here needs to be equal with the name of the user that authenticated. So if I'm going back, these are not equal. This is the user in my case, John. This is what I wrote. They are not equal. If I'm pressing the send button, this should end up in a 403 forbidden, which makes sense. But if I would have called with a value on the path variable equal to the value, then my condition here will be true, and this will be a 200 OK because the authorization rule is fulfilled, and then the call should work as we expect. And we saw it happened because it ended the method. This time it stopped in the breakpoint that I've added, and I've added this breakpoint because I wanted to show you how the authentication looks like. So for example, what I'm using here is the authentication name. So one interesting thing is that you don't see the authentication name here in the authentication itself. So this name is actually the principal name here. So it means it's somehow hidden in the authentication object, but I can access it through the Spring expression language. But at the same time, I could have said something like authentication principal username. So if I would write something like this, then it would be the same thing. Of course, it doesn't really make sense, so I can simply just use name because it's shorter. But the idea is that imagine you would have had to apply an authorization rule based on some other information here, because here is where you can customize your information. You might have a token, you might have, as we will see in the next lessons, you might have an email, you might have something else. Then the idea is you can easily access this information to apply different authorization rules. So let's go up to the end, and you can see the 200 OK and demo 3, which is again what we expected because our authorization rule has been fulfilled. Using pre-authorized doesn't break the single responsibility principle for the controller. That is actually a good question. The idea is that theoretically you should separate the logic as much as possible, and you could say that applying logic here, the conditions might be outside of what a controller should do, which is manipulating the HTTP request and response. But at the same time, the logic itself, so here you have only the condition, the logic itself is decoupled, it's in an aspect, isn't it? So it's not like you have applied here logic for the authorization. The logic that sets the 403 forbidden on the response and so on, it's still somewhere else. So it's only the condition you see here, and it's more comfortable to see it here, so I wouldn't say that it breaks the single responsibility principle. But yes, I see where you are going with that. However, the principles are designed to make our life easier, and if you use the pre-authorized on the controller, I don't see how it would make your life less easy. On the contrary, you would see directly on the end on the method where you can also see the endpoint, the authorization configuration, which makes things easier when you want to know what are the conditions in which someone can call the method. Yeah, that's my answer to that. So I would say no, it should not break the single responsibility principle. Cool. So now we learned how to access the values of the parameters, and I told you how to access, and the fact that you can access the authentication itself. What else can we do with pre-authorized? Well, one of the other things we didn't discuss is what happens if you have a more complex scenario here than just a condition like this one, which is very simple. Like, of course, you can complicate the authorization condition as much as you'd like. So you can just say if something equals to authentication name or has any authority, read write. And again, you can go sorry, my fault here. So and you can go as much complex as you'd like. So and now counting we are using Java 17, I would actually at least use something like this instead of this. Okay, okay. So at least if I have a condition that it's a little bit more than just one line, I would use text blocks if I have them, if I have a version, a Java version enough to allow me. And if it's just a couple of lines, then it's not that bad still, because I can still read it. But don't do more than this. I mean, you should not go beyond this in the conditions using Spring expression language, at least in my opinion. I've seen applications where the authorization condition on the pre-authorized annotation was very large. It becomes difficult to understand, and that's not the only problem. The one of the problems is also that um, it's also that uh, if something goes wrong, very difficult to debug. You can't put a breakpoint here. You can't just add a breakpoint here and it will stop in the condition. And if the condition is wrong and it's complex and it's based on many variables, it will make your life more difficult, and that's what I recommend in that situation. And let me show you how I recommend it. Okay, is instead of doing that, you just create a separate class, and then of course you can have parameters, but it's not relevant if you have or not now for this example. What you can do, and what I want to prove you how to do, is in security, and then you can just say demo for condition evaluator, and then you have here, this is should be component or something like that. You have the method, this is the condition. Of course, don't call it condition in a real world application. Call it in a way in which you clearly can read what that is. Yeah, and then you have here your complex authorization condition. And then you can just go back, inject it here, and use it on the annotation. Sorry, is actually my fault. You can't inject it here. I'm dumb. You can use it as a bean directly on the condition. You don't need to inject it at all. You just use it as a bean. So just say what was the name of this class? This is the one. The name of the bean should be with a small letter in front, and then you simply call your method. So that's it. And this should actually work. Yeah, you don't have to inject it, so no worries, my fault. You just put it here and the expression should recognize it, and we can test to make sure that this is true. Oh, it should be demo 4. The logout implementation the logout. Let's take the logout implementation in a different session, because it's totally different to what we discussed now. So I will make a note on that, and maybe I will create a separate video about logout. Something with ambiguous mapping. Let me check what this the demo for. Okay, sorry, my fault again. So you can't have the same path and the same method. It doesn't make sense. I'm going to try one more time. So that's why you don't do copy paste programming in real world applications. Okay, I've copy pasted. I'm a little bit tired now, and you can see how easily I made already a couple of mistakes. So you can imagine that in a real world application, when you copy paste, you can similarly do mistakes, and these are only some very simple endpoints. Imagine that in a real world application you have more complex methods. So trust me, never do copy paste programming. Copy paste programming means you copy paste the code, and then you try to change it. If you do something like that, it's very error prone. And then you call demo 4. So bad. Okay, and I have 500 again, something not public or not valid. I'm pretty sure that I made it public. Public. I thought that this should be needed because it's a condition, but it seems that something is wrong with what I did. I will have to check it. So guys, I have no idea why I get this now. Maybe it's because I should actually have something like that in front. Should I? Yeah, demo, actually, when it's a bean, demo for condition, you should put, I think, the at in front. Again, I'm just not attentive today. While it's restarting, I will read your questions. So how can we pass the authentication object on the condition? So as you can see here, the authentication is given like this, but yeah, you could pass it actually as a parameter, but you should not. It's much simpler than that. To get the authentication, you can anywhere in the application just use security context holder, context get authentication. So this is how you get the authentication. I hope that answers your question, Kingsley. And then the next question out of context, in OAuth 2, okay, I won't answer that. We will discuss about OAuth 2 later in the next lessons. Okay, and then it started again, and let's try it again. And finally, after my attempts, guys, I'm again see, not really my best time, but I try my best. We have a 200 OK and a demo 4. So that happened because when we called, you see, we have this is the bean. So remember, when you use a bean, don't forget to add the at in front when you have to refer to the bean. This is a Spring expression language syntax. And then you have the method itself, and then because the method returns true, we managed to call the demo 4 endpoint. If you would make this returning false, then it should not work anymore. And that's basically it. So that's what you can do with pre-authorized. And again, it's very powerful from 2 points of view. First of all, you can refer on the parameters method. So you can just simply say sharp symbol and then the name of the parameter, and you can either pass it as a parameter if you want here to have it as a parameter. You can anytime use the authentication. Of course, you can pass it, but easiest is just to get it from the security context. That's something that you can do from anywhere. And then you decide which is the condition. Okay, so I'm calling this now 403 forbidden, and of course the reason is we turn false here. Now, why is this better actually than having complex conditions? Like I've shown, okay, this is not a very complex one, but imagine a condition on multiple lines, on 5-10 lines. So you would not possibly, you would not at least easily debug it. But now if I have it like this, if I have extracted my condition into a separate method, then it's very easy to put a breakpoint here and investigate what's wrong and why is the condition false, you see. So I then have access via debugging to any of the variables, and I can check what's wrong, and that's much easier. So my recommendation for you guys is never use complex conditions. Extract the condition like this using separate objects so that it's easier for you to debug. So we saw that we can have conditions on the parameters and on the authentication, and we saw that we can add the pre-authorized on any method. So here I demonstrated with the controller. In many cases in real world applications you see it on the controller, because that's usually on a web application where you have that's the entry point, you know. So it doesn't really make sense to allow the request go to the controller and not on the service level, unless you have maybe one service that is called by multiple controllers, one service method, and you want to somehow add the condition only once for both. Theoretically you can use the pre-post annotations. Any of your pre-post annotations can be used on any method of any bean. So in the service classes, in the repositories as well, you can use this. At some point we will see, probably in the future lessons, that's even integrated with Spring Data, so you can use pre-authorized, for example, directly even on the method on the interface that represents your repository. You can do that. So it's very, very powerful, okay? But putting it on the controller level, which is kind of, from a logical point of view, equivalent to adding the rule on the filter level, like we learned in the first lessons. What's more comfortable here is that you see the evaluation condition directly near the endpoint itself. So it's very, very simple. It's much easier to to relate, to link the two, to understand, to see the fact that a specific authorization condition is given for a specific endpoint. So that's what makes pre-authorized usually preferred by developers, instead of using the filter rules. So this is for pre-authorized. Okay, what else do we have? Of course, we already discussed that we have 4 annotations, and I have only shown you pre-authorized, which happens to be, in my experience, the most used of all these annotations. So when it comes to global method security and authorization at the method level, pre-authorized is maybe the annotation. Probably 90 something% of the cases this is what you will use, because in most cases when we discuss about authorization is disallowing someone enter a specific piece of code, but the others are also used sometimes. So let's check on how this works as well. So let's further discuss about post-authorized. These were pre-authorized, and then followed by post-authorized. And in post-authorized, again, I will do some copy-paste programming, which is something you should not do in real-world apps. So demo 5. I don't think we need a parameter anymore. and instead of pre-authorized we have post-authorized. Post-authorized. And post-authorized actually is called post because the rules will be applied after the method is called. So unlike pre-authorized, if you use post-authorized, the call will be allowed to enter the method even if the condition is not fulfilled. So this is something that sounds strange in the first place. You would say, why would the heck I would allow the execution to enter the method and then still return the 403 if the method already executed? Doesn't it sound a little bit strange? Well, there are situations where you don't necessarily want to restrict the method execution, but you want to restrict only the value, the access to the value that is returned. So post-authorized is mainly used when we want to restrict the access to some return value. Okay, this is how post-authorized works, and you will most likely never use post-authorized on methods that change data, because it again doesn't really make sense. So it wouldn't make sense to allow changing data and then return 403. Post-authorized, it's only about the value that is returned. So you return some value, you get it, say, from a database, and then you apply a condition based on the value, and for some reason that value should not be sent further back to the client because some authorization rule is not fulfilled. And that's what you do with post-authorized. What example can we give here? So say I just have demo 5 here, and I can say something like returned come on object equals demo 5, which in this case you can obviously see that the condition is true, which means that if I'm restarting the application now and I will call demo 5, I should get back demo 5 in the body and 200 OK. But then I will change the condition, I will make it different then, and you will see that 403. But one essential thing, and I forgot that, I want to add a system out here so we can see that in both cases, whether it is or not allowed, in the end the method will anyway execute. So I'm restarting again the application that I will call the endpoint. Then I'm going to go back here. So this is demo 5, and then I send, and we get back to 100 OK, and we get back demo 5, and that makes sense because the condition is true, and you can see the smiley face, which means that the method executed. And now let's change it. Let's say it's different than, and I will still keep the smiley face, and the expectation is that now, because I changed the condition, now it's false, what will happen is that we will get a 403 and we will see no value in the body, but the smiley face will still be displayed in the console, which proves that even if we return a forbidden, the method executed. So that's only when you want to post-authorize. It's only when you want to add a condition based on the value of the object that is returned, and you don't have the possibility to add that authorization condition before having that value. So you somehow get a value, or your algorithm create somehow a value, and then based on that value that has been created somehow, you apply the authorization rules. So I'm restarting now the application. I will call the endpoint. We will see the 403, but we will see also the smiley face, meaning that the method executed. So post-authorized doesn't, it's very important to remember, doesn't restrict the access to the method. After the method executed, it restricts the access to the returned value if the condition doesn't apply, if the condition is not fulfilled correctly. So we go here, we do that again, and then we see 403 forbidden, but the smiley face is here, proving that even if we got 403, the method still executed because post-authorized applies the authorization only after. That's why never use post-authorized with methods that change data. Okay. So we have method security operation. We can implement this class and we can define our own function like has role type. What would you suggest to create a bean or using this operation? Of course, I will suggest using a bean because it's a lot more easy than having custom operations. So yes, you can do that, of course, because you can in Spring. It's a framework, no, it's made customizable. That's the purpose of a framework. But in that case, you would have to know exactly how to define, and you assume that everyone knows how to define, whether in this case it's only an object, it's only the definition. You don't have to implement a specific interface, you don't have any complexity, you just define your method, you name it appropriately, of course, not like I did here. And in my perspective, using a bean this way is more advantageous. Okay, so we prove the post-authorized, and then of course we have the other two, which are filter, the filter, pre and post filter annotation. So how do we use the pre and post filter? They don't restrict the access completely to the endpoint, but they restrict the access to specific values. And let's first start the discussion with prefilter. And then whenever we use prefilter, we need to have, I will create a demo 6 endpoint. We need to have as a parameter an array. It's either an array or a collection. It works with both of them. Of course, probably in most cases we'd have a collection because it's much easier to use than an array. But I think it makes sense to mention that works with either array or collection. And then you can add the prefilter here, which means that whatever parameter you have, it will try to filter it. And say that we have a list that we get from the request body. Okay. And then in the prefilter, you see you have a value. You also have the filter target. Now you don't necessarily need to specify the filter target if you only have one list, but the idea is that, of course, your question might be what happens if I have multiple lists or multiple parameters. How would prefilter know to which of the lists would it have to apply the filtering? And then the answer is simple. You can specify the collection to which the condition applies by using the filter target. So I see, guys, multiple people asked me about spell if I have. I honestly I don't remember. I might have. If you will search on my channel, if you don't find anything, then I will put it on my list, because I don't know now if I created or not already something on spell. It might be in the Spring Fundamentals playlist, but I'm not sure if I did or not. Okay, and then what you do here, it's say, for example, filter object contains, see, okay, filter object will always be the value inside the collection. So in my case, because I have a list of strings, then of course the filter object is a string. So then I can say something like filter object contains a, and then it's I think it's pretty clear what this condition does. It will allow only the values that contain character A. So all the values that don't contain A will be removed from the list before the method is called. So prefilter doesn't restrict completely the access to the method. It simply filters based on the condition the values that are sent to the method. And yes, we can even either that or say system out, print the values. And let's try this endpoint to see how it works. Okay, still compiling. 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 Okay, finally. And then we have demo 6. And I have to provide a request body, I guess. So I have to go here. Let's give it raw, JSON, and something like ABCD. Oh, sorry, codes, my codes. And then B, C, D, R, which doesn't contain A. Again, let's have something that contains A. And then let's have something that doesn't contain A again. So like this. And then you send it. And of course it works, because again, prefilter doesn't restrict. But if you go here, the surprise will be that what the system out prints is only a list of the values that fulfill this condition. So that's why instead of 4 values, you see I sent 4 values, you will only see 2 of them, because are the ones containing A in my case, because that was the rule. So you can clearly see that the other 2 values have been excluded, and the method doesn't even know that actually multiple values have been sent in the request. For the method, it's like this list always had had only 2 values, so that's how it was called with. So why do we need it? We can filter after we receiving the body. Well, you can say the same about everything, isn't it? Why do we need pre-authorized? You can do this after you receive the body here. So on this way of thinking, you would basically be able to say that any of these annotations are not useful, because you can also do that before, isn't it? Like in the method, the idea is extracting, decoupling the code that is related to security, and that's what all these 4 annotations do. So they decouple the logic. Now, of course, can you filter inside? Can you do authorization inside the method? Yes, but that would mean you couple the authorization logic with the business logic of the application, or in this case being controllers with the way they manage the request and the response. So basically the whole purpose of having these annotations is to make the code easier to maintain. Having it separately, it's easier to maintain. We cannot cover this type of logic in a unit test case. I don't agree with that either. Well, first of all, if you have it on this on the parameter itself, then you can write an integration test, and I will show you actually at the end of this playlist how to write integrations tests. But if you have extracted, as I told you here, for example, you can even write unit tests, isn't it? So can we write unit tests and can we do TDD with this? Yes, we can. Is it recommended because it decouples the logic from the implementation? Yes, it's recommended. So TDD is friendly with this, testing is friendly with this, but tests, it said themselves. So integration tests with Spring Security, I will discuss that subject in one of the last lessons of the series. I hope it makes sense. Post filter doesn't seem very useful. Should this yes, I will talk in that about post filter. So now, as I stated a little bit earlier when discussing the whole stuff, remember I stressed more on pre-authorized, because the truth is, in most cases, pre-authorized is what you will use. Post-authorized maybe sometimes, but again, remember that it should not be a method that mutates data. Pre-filter, it's only when you really have some authorization related to usually the authenticated user. Because if don't get me wrong, I used here a simple condition just to make the example easy to understand, but in general it should be something like you have a list of objects and you make sure that, for example, they belong to the authenticated user. So I would not use pre-filter to filter on a list based on a business condition. It doesn't make sense. No, pre-filter is still part of the security, the security dependencies of your project. So it makes sense only if this is really related to securing the method, which usually is make sure that the objects sent belong to the authenticated user, or I don't know, it's usually something related to the authenticated user. So I didn't add here anything because I made a simple example, but same as I use the authenticated user in pre-authorized, and same way you can use it here, and you can apply a condition so that you filter the objects, for example, that are not accepted to be sent for the authenticated user, such that in this case you still call the method, it works fine, but it's applied only for the values that belong to the authenticated user. So remember, with pre-filter we don't use it to just to filter a value. If that would be part of the business logic, then on the contrary, I will put it at the service level in the method. No, here is only about security, so it's about applying an authorization rules, but at the values inside the collection. So it should only be used if it's about security, not about just filtering something. Okay, and then I hope that makes sense. And then let's go to post-authorized, post filter. Sorry, post filter. Okay, and then the last endpoint for today, and I think we used pretty wisely the time. I can see that. So demo 7, and we do a post filter. And when you do a post filter, then it doesn't really matter if you have a value or a parameter or not. The post filter will actually filter the return value, and that means that return value needs to be, it's mandatory to be either a collection or an array. So the returned type must be either a collection, let's write it with capital C so everyone understands this collection. I mean like literally those collections that are implementing the collection interface. So that's lists and sets, not maps. Okay, maps are not implementing the collection interface. Or an array. And then of course let's say here something like list of string, and then just return. That's a very interesting. I will show you something really interesting here. Do you think it will work if I say list of A, B, C, D or whatever? Let's actually use the same example. Filter object contains A, B, C, D, something, then something, and then something again without A. Okay. And this will not work actually. So post filter on the condition, very easy to understand as a concept. It's applying the authorization. Again, post filter should also apply the authorization rule, so we don't apply it for a business logic. In this case, for simplicity, I use something very simple just to make the example easy to digest, but usually it should be something related to the authenticated user. Now what should this do is allows the method filter, after calling the method and getting the result, it will filter the values such that only those that fulfill this rule written here will be accepted. So the method will be accepted, but will be called, will return, but only those values will stay in the list that fulfill the rule you have given on post filter. So is it or not useful? Well, it depends on how you use it. Again, going back, pre-authorized is most likely what you will see. All the other four, they will not be so often used. But if you want to apply a security condition, an authorization condition based on a rule in which you want to make sure that what has been returned is only what should be returned for a specific client, then I would say it makes sense. Now this will not work, and the reason it will not work is list of creates an immutable collection. Let me see, did any one of you manage to find that out? So no, I'm not very tired actually. My voice is because the last long karaoke night, so don't worry, I'm good. I'm just a little bit tired. Why we rely on post filter to exclude some object based on a condition, even we can take that decision early. To be honest, prefer the post and post filter seem not useful. To be honest with you, I don't use them and I don't prefer them either. So I want to teach them about you, but I want to teach you about them, but I don't think that it's actually post filter. I've seen it wrongly applied, and that will be next time when we meet, because we don't have any more time any longer today. But next time when we meet, I will tell you about the anti-pattern of using post filter on the repository. When you get something from the database, I will tell you now, I will remind you next time and maybe demonstrate it. When you get something from the database, make sure you put all the conditions in the query such that you only get from the data, from the DBMS, those values you need. Never ever do something like find all and use post filter to filter the values. That's wrong. Or anyway, don't use any query and post filter to further filter. You can always filter on the where clause directly on the SQL, and is what you should do. using post filter to filter things after you get them from the database, it's an anti-pattern and you should avoid that. You would use post filter only if somehow there is no other alternative to apply your filtering, and only if it's related to security, only in that case. Okay, and to state that again, you will not probably find often such a situation. Okay, you will not often find it. Okay, let's prove, because it's late. I will prove that this doesn't work, then I will make it work. And I think that we at least covered a lot of the things that I wanted to discuss, and we didn't of course finish the playlist, so there will always be a next time when we meet and we will discuss, we will continue our discussion. We didn't finish with global method security. I still have things to say about that. We have to see how it works at the service level. We have to see that it works at the repository level. I have to prove the anti-pattern for you, and so on and so forth. So demo 7 would be the next one. I don't need a body for this one. I just send, and then I get 500. Oh my god, why? Let's see, what did we do here? Oh, it's, yeah, it's because because it should haven't worked. Okay, it should not work. It's because we, as we said, it should not work. It doesn't work because list of creates an immutable collection, and what post filter tries to do is to change it, and you can't change an immutable collection, because that's why it's called immutable. It's immutable because you can't change it. So it will say something like it's immutable, unsupported operation exception, meaning you can't change. So the aspect behind the scenes tries to change it, it can't change it. Okay, we can easily prove that if you have an array list which is mutable, string, okay, then this should work. Okay, and then maybe I will actually do like this. So say list of something, and then leave the comment here for you to remember why it doesn't work, and then I will prove that this one works. Okay, good. Okay, so auth 2, no, I don't want to discuss that. This is a stream where each lesson has its own subject. We will get to auth 2 some times after, so in the next lesson. So let's discuss that at that time, so we don't mix the subjects. What is the difference between enable method security and enable global method security? Let me take this question, because it's already over the time. Let me take this question. Can you remind me the question, please, in the next lesson, and I will discuss it at that time. So I can now just show you the result and the stream, so you can see the result is fine now. We don't have the exception. You can see that only the values containing a remained. Fine, that's according to our expectations, and we proved how post filter works. Okay, so I will try to note down your questions, guys, because it's already over the hour that I have scheduled and I need to close. But I hope that we managed to discuss the pre-authorized, post-authorized, pre-filter and post-filter, and that you clearly understood how you could apply them. We will continue our discussion with some more examples in the next lesson when we meet the next time. Until then, please don't forget to place all the questions that you still have in the comment section. You can also find me on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, and we can discuss there as well, and answer hopefully to all your questions in the next lessons. Thank you very much, everyone. So in that case, I'm waving goodbye, and I'm telling you Have an excellent time for studying further.